It all started on an ordinary Sunday afternoon when Andre, an average man living in a small town, stumbled upon a quaint antique shop at the edge of the city. He had no intention of buying anything, but the strange atmosphere of the shop piqued his curiosity. Shelves filled with peculiar trinkets, old clocks, and dusty books lined the walls. One item in particular caught his eye: a small, intricately carved puppet. It was no ordinary toy. Its features were unnervingly realistic, with glassy eyes that seemed to follow Andre wherever he went. The puppet was dressed in a tiny, tattered suit, with joints that looked so well made they could almost be real. The shopkeeper, an old man with a mysterious air about him, noticed Andre's interest. "Ah, the puppet. A special one. That is," the old man said, his voice raspy but confident. "It belonged to a magician once." Andre raised an eyebrow. "A magician?" The old man nodded. "They say it holds a curse. Whoever owns it will soon find themselves in grave danger unless they know the right magic to break it." Andre chuckled, amused by the story. He wasn't superstitious, nor did he believe in curses. The puppet intrigued him, though, and despite the shopkeeper's warning, he bought it, thinking it would make a fine addition to his home's eclectic decor. The moment he took the puppet home, strange things began to happen. At first, it was small, almost unnoticeable things. A window left open when Andre was certain he had closed it, the lights flickering for no apparent reason. But as the days passed, the disturbances grew more unsettling. He would hear faint whispers in the middle of the night, the sound coming from the direction of the puppet. When he looked at it, those glassy eyes seemed to be filled with malice, as if they were laughing at him. Then came the dreams. They were dark, vivid, and terrifying. Every night, Andre found himself running through endless corridors, chased by shadowy figures, monsters whose forms were ever-changing, their faces grotesque and distorted. No matter how fast he ran, they were always right behind him, breathing down his neck, their raspy whispers echoing in his ears. One night, Andre woke up covered in sweat, the sound of a low growl still lingering in his ears. He turned to look at the puppet, which sat on the shelf across from his bed, and froze. Its head had turned slightly to the side, now facing him directly, even though he was sure he had left it facing the window. That was the last straw. Andre needed answers. He remembered the old man at the antique shop mentioning something about the puppet's connection to a magician. Desperate, he returned to the shop, but to his dismay, the old man was gone. The shop was closed, and there was no sign of anyone having been there recently. With no other leads, Andre began his search for a magician, hoping that perhaps someone out there could help him. Days turned into weeks as he scoured the city, visiting libraries, old bookstores, and even consulting with self-proclaimed paranormal experts. Most of them laughed at his story, dismissing it as the ravings of an over-imaginative mind. But one night, while browsing through an old forum about the occult, Andre came across a name: Sergei Volkov, a reclusive magician who was said to specialize in breaking curses. According to the forum, Sergei had helped people in the past with similar problems, though his methods were often unconventional. Without wasting any time, Andre tracked down Sergei's location, an old house in the woods, far from the city. The house was decrepit, its windows boarded up, and the garden overgrown with weeds. But this was his only hope. Sergei was a tall, thin man with piercing eyes that seemed to see right through Andre. After listening to his story, Sergei nodded gravely. "You are dealing with something far more powerful than you realize," he said. "That puppet is not just cursed, it is a vessel for dark forces. These monsters you see in your dreams are not just figments of your imagination. They are real, and they are getting closer." Andre's blood ran cold. "Is there anything you can do?" Sergei thought for a moment, then motioned for Andre to follow him to a room in the back of the house. Inside, shelves were lined with jars filled with strange ingredients, powders, dried herbs, and what appeared to be animal bones. In the center of the room was a large table covered with symbols and candles. "I can help," Sergei said, lighting the candles and drawing intricate patterns on the table. "But this will not be easy. The bond between you and the puppet is strong. Breaking it will take time, and a great deal of focus. For hours, Sergei chanted incantations, his voice echoing through the dimly lit room. Andrei watched as the puppet, placed in the center of the table, began to twitch and move as if it were alive. The air in the room grew thick with tension, and Andrei could feel the presence of something dark, lurking just beyond the edge of his vision. Suddenly, the room grew cold, and the shadowy figures from Andrei's dreams appeared. They surrounded the table, their monstrous forms twisting and contorting in the flickering candlelight. Sergei's chanting grew louder, more intense, as he fought to keep the creatures at bay. Andrei wanted to run, but his legs were frozen in place. He watched in horror as the monsters reached for him, their long, clawed fingers stretching closer and closer. Just when it seemed like all hope was lost, Sergei's voice reached a fever pitch, and the room exploded with light. The monsters shrieked in pain, their forms dissolving into the air as the light grew brighter and brighter. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The room was silent, the monsters were gone, and the puppet lay lifeless on the table, its glassy eyes now dull and empty. Sergei wiped the sweat from his brow and turned to Andrei. "It is done. The curse is broken." Andrei let out a sigh of relief, though he couldn't shake the feeling that something was still watching him. Sergei must have noticed the look on his face, for he added, "The bond is severed, but be careful. Dark forces like these never truly disappear. They simply wait for another opportunity." With that warning in mind, Andrei left Sergei's house, the puppet still in his possession but no longer a source of fear. Life slowly returned to normal, though Andrei couldn't help but feel that the monsters were still out there, waiting in the shadows, just beyond the edge of his dreams. And from that day on, he never looked at puppets or shadows the same way again.